Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie. I'm a full-time sketchbook artist, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about how I create sketchbook art and the secret behind it in filling my sketchbooks. Whilst I talk about this topic, I am going to be sharing two processes of art in my sketchbook, and they are both woodland inspired because that was our theme on Patreon in April. So the first one, I'm working in my Hahnemuehle sketchbook, and I'm using a mix of media here, starting with acrylic paint, which you'll see I kind of scrape on to create a really nice texture. And then I use a bit of everything, so there is some acrylic markers, some Faber-Castell gelatos, some distress crayons, coloured pencils, basically everything I have. So let me know if you have any questions about the materials that I use and I'll answer in the comments. And of course I also use my watercolour palette. Then the next one that you'll see later on, I'm using just my Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolours, and I'm doing that in my Royal Talents Art Creation sketchbooks. As I said, I'm happy to answer any material questions down below because I'm not going to be answering or talking through my process. I'm mostly going to be talking about the topic I want to address today. So the big secret to my sketchbook art, and something that I think is really important to share, is I have to make myself create art. It can look so easy online, especially with social media. Everything just looks like it's been created without any effort, I suppose, or, you just see the end result. You don't see the battle that sometimes is had to get there. And I know things can always look rosy on social media, and often it's not, and I think that's sometimes, a negative point of it. But the truth is that it often isn't. And as I said, I have to make myself create. So I don't wait for inspiration or ideas. I give myself set times to sit down and work in my sketchbook. Sometimes that is just 10 minutes, sometimes that is an hour, generally not more than that, but usually I have to set aside a specific amount of time to be able to create a tool. And creativity and ideas and inspiration only comes when I'm creating. I don't wait for that before I start and open my sketchbook. There's a famous quote by Pablo Picasso which says, "Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working." And I couldn't agree more. We have to do the work to find the inspiration. Sure, you may feel that spark of inspiration when you're out and about. Maybe you see a gorgeous view that you want to paint, or find a reference you'd really like to draw in your style. And I found when you feel these moments, when these moments happen, you do have to jump on them because you can't access that feeling later. If you do feel that spark, you really do have to act in the moment because you can't just come back to it later and think, oh, I'll just do that when I've got a bit of time, because it won't really happen. But putting in the work of setting myself time to create has led to many, many sketchbooks being filled. It's the answer to my career and how I've built my practice, and it's because I force myself to sit down and create. And that makes it sound like a bad thing, like forcing myself to do it as if it's something I don't want to do, but it's not. I absolutely love creating, and I feel so at peace when I'm painting. I find that it's the only activity that really switches off my overactive, overthinking brain. But for some reason, my brain forgets this when I'm not drawing and thinks it's not important. There's the admin, the editing, all of the other stuff of my job that doesn't involve putting paint to paper, and also life stuff like housework and washing, and my brain is telling me that's more pressing. And there is always more of that to do. Always more things like that to keep me busy, which is why I have to find the time and set it aside to be creative. Otherwise, life fills everything, and you won't get around to the things you'd actually rather be doing. So you do have to make time for art. It's not impossible. You can create just 5 minutes per day. I find that often if you don't have much time, you can replace usually scrolling because of social media with opening your sketchbook. And I've talked about this many, many times on my channel, that it's usually about changing your expectations in what you can create, because you might think you want to create something perfect in 5 minutes, and that's never going to happen. But just having 5 minutes to swatch or play with materials will make such a big difference. So you really don't need much time, and it's all about that practice and making that time and sitting yourself down to do the practice to actually find the inspiration when you're creating. So for me, I really can't sit down only when I'm feeling inspired, because I wouldn't have filled half the sketchbooks that I would have. I mean, even less than that. I feel most creative when I am creating, and I really can't wait for that. So although it sounds like a bad thing that I have to force myself to create, it really isn't, because having it's not a set routine, because there's not a set day or time that I sit down, because obviously, like I said, there are very important things of my job that isn't part of the actual creating, and I still have to do those things. Obviously, it would be a perfect world if we didn't, and we could let go of all of life's stuff that we have to do and all the expectations we have on ourselves and just have fun in our sketchbook, and really that is the dream. But life isn't like that, so I really do have to make myself sit down. It's why I love Patreons and art communities, because there's a set time that I have to sit down at my desk and be creative and open my sketchbook. So on my Patreon, it's really helpful for myself as well as other artists to have this community where we show up for ourselves and create with others to fill something in our sketchbook. And that's really helpful too, because we're told what to create, we're told usually how long to create for, and we're given the reference. So not just on my Patreon, there's also loads of other obviously communities and stuff that we can share and join in with, but it's a really nice way to schedule in that time, because I know it can be really easy to not to. As I said, there's always other stuff to be at the top of our priority list. There's always things that we should be doing rather than something that we would like to be doing. But it is really important that you set yourself time to be creative, because as I said, this society doesn't necessarily put weight onto creativity. So you have to do that for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself that you're going to take this time, because you know when you're doing it, you feel good. And it doesn't mean that all of the art you create is going to be good either. And I am saying that in quotes and inverted commas, because there's no such thing as good and bad art. But there will be times where you sit down and you force yourself to create and it won't go very well. And that is totally normal, totally natural. As a full-time artist, there's many, many times that I'll sit down and create in my sketchbook and I really won't like what I've made. And again, I've talked about that on my channel, but often it's because your expectation of what you're creating is going to be different to what actually comes out on the page. I've definitely got a lot better with that as I create more, so it's definitely a thing that comes with practice, but generally you kind of sit down, and I don't tend to have a set thing of what I think I'm going to create. I just let it happen. So I find that's really helpful, because I don't go in thinking I know exactly what I want this painting to turn out like. And I think that's really helped open up my creativity, because I'm not expecting anything. I'm not thinking in my head, oh, I really want this to look really super detailed and really perfect like it is in my mind's eye. So by getting rid of that first image, it doesn't matter what will happen, because I don't know what will happen. I don't know if that makes sense, but I really think that's helped me to curb my perfectionism. I was very detail oriented and I really wanted to create perfect art when I started out sort of being an artist and trying to grow and build this business. And this was way before I became freelance. I just really, really wanted to be a good artist. And that really didn't help me. So by working looser and not having a set idea in my mind's eye really, really helped with that. So I know a lot of you in the comments battle with perfectionism and overthinking with your art. So I really recommend that, of going in without a set expectation of how you'd like it to be. I know it can be really easy with social media of having, oh, I wish my art was like theirs, or I wish I could paint like that. But try going in with just the expectation of having fun and finding joy whilst you create, and, being mindful and just enjoying the process, because I think you'll like the result a lot more. I think it's really easy for us to have really high expectations on ourselves and really hold ourselves to a really high standard that we wouldn't with other people. So I think there's a lot to be said with speaking to yourself kindly. You often see speak to yourself as a friend in self-care circles, but it's the same with art. So be kind to yourself and just enjoy the process, because that really does make such a difference. And give yourself that time to create. Make yourself time and sit down and open your sketchbook and create, because you just want to find that peace. Certainly that's what I find when I create in my sketchbooks. But if you don't give yourself that time, then you won't be able to create the art. There's no point waiting for the perfect time to create or waiting for that inspiration to hit, because life is busy and it's very, very hard to find that time. I know that we all have different responsibilities and lots going on in all of our different lives, so I know it's not easy, but you can find time to create, and you have to find that time. Otherwise, there's so much stuff that, gets overtaken and goes to the top of our to-do list. So really think putting art on our to-do list as something that we really need to sit down and create and make time for is so, so important. And that's really my secret with sketchbook art, is you really do have to make the time for it. Even as a professional artist, obviously that sounds like I've got all the time in the world to create, but there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes and a lot of stuff that you don't see. And I don't spend that long creating each week, but when I do, I have made that time. I could easily go weeks without painting because there's so much stuff that I need to do. And obviously it does help that a lot of my work is painting. So obviously I know that I need to film a video each week for YouTube, and so I need to paint or create for that. Though obviously not all my videos involve painting, sometimes it's hauls or reviews and things like that. But it is still something I need to make time for, and I really like having this YouTube video and having my Patreon because it really forces me to be creative. Obviously in a good way. I'm so glad that I have it, and it's why it's like the perfect job for me, because I'm very lucky to be able to do this and earn money from it. And as I said, painting and creating in my sketchbook is the only way to really quiet my mind. I don't have any other hobbies that really does that in the same way, and I can really get lost in a painting. There will be times when it won't go very well, which is totally fine. As I said, really, really is normal to feel that way. And I think it does get easier the more you create. But you have to put in that work to be able to get to that point. It's really, really easy to give up and not continue. But without that, you won't be able to get to where you want to be. So I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it comes across as a passionate conversation rather than a rant about sketchbooking. But I really do think that's what has helped me as an artist, and I don't see it talked about often. As I said, social media makes things look easy, and often it's not. But I really recommend setting yourself time to create, whether it is just 5 minutes or half an hour. It doesn't have to be every day. I think sometimes that is difficult, but just making yourself create and making yourself sit down instead of waiting for that inspiration is really, really important, and I hope it unlocks a lot of creativity for you. It often unlocks loads of inspiration too, but you just have to be working to be able to find it. A big thank you to my patrons because they support my work and help me to do this as a full-time job, whereas YouTube is more of a hobby in terms of income. But I also want to say thank you to you for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts about this down below if you find that you also have to work in this way and if you are going to try it out. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my process today, and I will speak to you all next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later!